So we got an Atari VCS in from one of our viewers on loan, and from what we understand so far, the Atari VCS, much like the struck-through smile on the front of this box, has had an unhappy history. But we're going to embark on our journey of understanding it. We'll start with a teardown in today's video. We also have some testing of the console, if you can call it that, coming up. The Atari VCS has been in development production for years and years now. It was a crowd-funded campaign. There were a couple $100 each to get one, and they're just starting to fulfill those orders, finally. We were unable to actually get a unit officially from whoever it is that's selling it these days, I guess Atari or what's left of it. So we sourced one from Gregory Parks, one of our viewers, who is also a Patreon backer. And thank you to Gregory for sending this over on loan. We have promised that we will attempt to non-destructively tear it down. So if it's like the previous console rehashes, then that shouldn't be too hard. We'll see if it's just a Raspberry Pi and a giant empty plastic shell though. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermaltake's Core P3 case. The Core P3 is one of the most unique cases on the market. It can serve as an open-air standing chassis, a test bench in vertical or horizontal orientation, or as a wall-mounted showcase PC. The Core P3 now comes with a 5mm thick tempered glass panel for its side, but keeps the front, top, and back open for air. You can learn more at the link in the description below. So here's the Atari VCS. From what Patrick is more of the expert on this one. He'll be doing a lot of the testing on it. What I understand, it's sort of like an Ouya. So we'll be looking at how it actually functions in the console testing, performance testing, all that. But to start off with, we do want to get through the teardown. And it does have that classic Atari look to it, but is all new. So we'll start with this, then I need to pull the controller out of the box and see how that looks. Let's take a look at the marketing, actually. Let's see how they're marketing this product. Oh, hey, that's not bad. Asteroids on the box. Okay, so they're advertising. What does it say? It says play new and retro games and apps. Asterisk. What is asterisk? Includes 30-day free trial subscription to Antstream Arcade. Payments and subscriptions required for advanced services. Okay, so apps are an advanced service. Includes 100 plus Atari classics. Stream your favorite games and videos, asterisk, 30-day free subscription in 4K resolution. It says discover Atari's classic joystick and modern controller, double asterisk. Oh, that's new. Double asterisk. Atari VCS classic joystick and modern controller sold separately. Individual games depicted for illustration purposes only. Okay. So modern controller featuring LED effects and rumble. Is that really? That's what we're defining as modern. I guess modern by comparison to the original Atari 2600 stuff. Customize unique PC mode. Got a triple asterisk. Triple asterisk. PC mode, additional operating systems not included. Upgradeable RAM and storage. Okay, so that is the marketing. We've got some images of asteroids. I see, is that Roller Coaster Tycoon? That must be for the PC mode, I think. That's Roller Coaster Tycoon, which most recently was an Atari property for Tycoon Worlds at least. And I guess we just need to actually look at the box now. So I'll set that aside. So like I said, Patrick will be doing some console testing on this, and that will include actually benchmarks, just for fun, see how it does. We do have custom software we built that will be able to benchmark the frame rate and analyze the frame time performance, because why not? That'll be kind of fun to do. And then the box itself is going to be more of my focus on the physical assembly side of things. Here's the Atari VCS Collector's Edition Official Certificate of Authenticity. So this is a thing that they are distributing. I don't know, it just feels a bit pretentious to me. This document confirms that the Atari Video Computer System referenced herein Got legal words. Is an authentic Atari VCS Collector's Edition. The unit is one of 6,000 produced and delivered by Atari VCS LLC in 2020. Numbered hologram. The certificate and its numbered hologram. There's no number on the hologram. Oh, I'm kind of disappointed. I wanted to see like a 50 out of 6,000 or something like that, but that's not on here. There's the number. Okay, numbered hologram is in fact on the console. Andrew's right. It's 3110 out of 6,000. We've also labeled all of these in case you don't know what they are. So for the rest, our viewer and Patreon backer did send along from, I believe, his sister some Star Trek Cats books along with the controller, which we'll take out in a second. He said, hey, I'm not asking for a plug. I just thought you might like these, which is accurate. But, I mean, that's pretty... There's Kirk fighting the... whatever the lizard thing was called that he fought. I remember this episode. I thought it was pretty cool. But, yeah, so Star Trek Cats, I guess. Not included with the Atari VCS, unfortunately. But it was included with ours. So, controller should be pretty familiar to everybody, even if you never had one. I do have an Atari system. Actually, you know what? This reminds me. Many years ago at like pharmacies, it was really popular to have those kind of cheap... Okay, we're going to deal with this first. Okay. Many years ago at pharmacies, it was really common to have cheap sort of, I don't know, you call them consoles in giant scare quotes, but they're supposed to be consoles. They're like between $20 and $100, targeted at the kids getting dragged through the store who are forced to be there and wait. And I remember I actually did buy an Atari controller that was in one of them, and it looked similar to this. And it was I don't know if it was licensed, I'm assuming it was, but it was an emulator, and it had all of the Atari classics on it, much like this claims it does, except it was in that form factor. You plugged the controller into the TV and then you played the games. And it was that simple. So certainly Atari games have been remade a lot of times. The difference, I think, with this one that got everyone so excited was that it's supposed to do more than that. It's supposed to be more advanced box. They've got these claims of app support and streaming support and PC customization. And then it also looks more like the original device. So I had forgotten that Patrick and I actually restored an Atari VCS. This is an Atari video computer system. It's one of the older ones. We have a whole video on it from actually March of 2020, and I bought this for $12 at a comic book store, and it was listed as 4 parts, and it actually worked fine. We did buy one part online. It was trivial to replace, but if I remember correctly, the conclusion of that video was that it didn't need to be replaced, and that this thing worked fine once we had it all plugged in and cleaned up anyway. So this is a real Atari VCS. There were a lot of different versions of this. So this, if I remember correctly, this is so it's a 4-switch VCS model. The Atari VCS was the original naming for this device. Then the Atari 2600 came out after that, or it was rebranded as the 2600. This model is produced somewhere in the range of 1980 to 1982, and the VCS naming existed 1982 and prior. The original release date of the VCS was 1977, so this is not that model. The European release was 78, Japan was 1983, and the lifespan of the VCS to 2600 is insane. It's 1977 to 1992. And from what I recall of the previous video, the initial price was about $200. Not sure if that's adjusted for inflation or not, but that's what we looked up back when we wrote that video. So it looks great, but this is one of the originals, in fact, and it all works and everything, takes cartridges, and we've got a video on that if you're interested in more content like this. The controllers were by far the worst part when we cleaned those out. There were decades of nerd grime in the controllers when we cleaned them. The new one, fortunately, does not need to be cleaned. It does need to be taken apart. Controller, I'd say that's not a great feeling. That's a little bit... How do the originals feel? Like it's got a more appropriate amount of resistance. Not a big fan of the wobble here, and I can't say that that is authentic because it's not. Yeah, I don't know I don't know how I feel about that quality there, but God, man, this is so disappointing. Everything is so disappointing. So you can kind of hear the button quality, but this is, you can feel some resisting, some tension. And then this one, it just feels shallow. It feels kind of like a start select button on a PS2 controller. That's the best comparison I can give you. So not very impressed so far. I would say this controller is superior in build quality. But this one looks like it's got that wannabe space age modern stuff. So I don't know how you weigh that. I'm assuming that these come off. Yep, okay. So that's trivial. I have not taken this apart before. We're gonna learn this together. So I do see a Torx screw down there. This side doesn't come out, which makes sense. There's a USB port right below it for, I think, the controller. That is the screw there. So these are probably on the inside. Yep. So that's going to reveal the screws. Okay. So I pulled, I think this is a Torx 9. That's maybe a little bit loose. Maybe should use a Torx 10, but it's not slipping, so we're going to go with Torx 9. Okay, easy enough. So I'll just track these screws just in case it gets complicated, but I have a feeling it's going to be 4 screws. Well, I'll give them credit. They didn't hide any screws under the stickers, so they get some credit for that. So my suspicion is that, oh yeah, okay. I was going to say, my suspicion is that these plates would have to come off in order to remove the back. So, well, cool, that was easy. I just started pulling on stuff and that came off without any issue. It's just plastic clipped on there. All right, I see. So then, oh, you gotta be careful. So if you do take this apart, you gotta be careful of the wireless antenna. I just hope we can play ET on it. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is there's a bit of Captain tape on here. I'm going to take this wireless card out so that we don't accidentally snap the antenna. They are soldered into the sheet on the other side. And I could peel that tape off, but I'd rather not start damaging stuff. We could leave the wireless card in and just unsnap there's snaps for these into it, so we could do that approach too. So nothing important at all on this side. I'm going to set this to the side. Nothing important here except for some molding marks. ABS, not surprising. I was just looking for a manufacture date. 2020 September is when this was made. Okay, underneath, that's the bottom of the console. We have some flow guidance here for a fan. Wow, that's really a long distance of travel for the air. So that must line up with this. Yeah. Okay. So slight mesh in front of, it's kind of laptop style, except it is a long travel distance. But is there anything in there? I think we can actually take this apart non-destructively as well. So this screw is just holding in a piece of rubber light diffuser for the LED that's underneath it. And then there's a ribbon cable here that goes to the other side. So I'm gonna disconnect these. I always try to identify power if there's a battery in something, and ribbon cables. I try to disconnect all those first. So you do have to pull up on this thing right here to disconnect them. That's standard. Pull on the other one too. We'll figure out where those go later. There is a fan power cable here. Now with the fan power cable, you have to be careful because if you pull on the wires, if it's not already loose, then the wires can come out of the housing. So I'm probably going to try to remove all this first. Then what I'm going to do is keep all the same screws together on the mat That is at least the same. That's good. So these are plastic screws. They're going into plastic on the other side, through the PCB and into plastic. So far, to give the VCS some credit here, this is a lot more PCB than I thought it would be. It's not very advanced. Like you can see, there's pretty limited amount of traces. There's not a lot of SMDs or through-hole parts on it. Really nothing here at all except for that capacitor and an LED. But maybe on the other side, it's definitely more than what I was expecting, which was honestly going to be like kind of Raspberry Pi type of parts. Yeah, so it's getting more complex. I guess that's good. So I'm removing this in a way that I don't have to interact that fan cable. This piece of tape, I'm not sure why it's there, but that's not us. Normally this is used to hold a wire on top of something, but it was not doing anything in this instance. So there's some holes in it probably for breathing, even though there's no airflow in this area. This fan is going to be, it's a squirrel cage. It's going to be pulling air, or attempting to pull air anyway, from here through probably a heatsink right here. Is it? Or is it pulling through the bottom? No, it can't pull through there. It would also have made sense if they set it up so that the fan could pull air through. The board would have to be flipped over through the bottom. This is the top. That would make sense too. So I'm not actually sure where this air is supposed to be traveling, but as in, I know where it's supposed to be traveling, but it has no way of going there. I don't know why they designed it this way. Well, maybe this. Let's see. So there might be something here where I'm trying to figure out why Atari designed it this way, because it's not really an efficient way to use a fan, especially this type. But I'm guessing this, I think, is probably mostly for symmetry, honestly. But if I'm trying to make it all work, because this is completely enclosed on all sides, the air would have to both come in through here and get pushed out through here, which seems odd. Normally, you've got some pull through that exposed part of the fan on laptops, and unless they block it, this is blocked by plastic, so it can't really pull through there. So where's the air come from? I guess here would be it. So whatever natural air just kind of drafts in is going to get pulled in through the fan and probably shot out. That's the best I can make of it. Now we're on to Phillips head stuff. So we're going to take this screw out. Wow, that was really loose. So they don't tighten this one all the way down, just for anyone at home who might be working on one of these later. It's got two plastic washers, two plastic about 1 millimeter washers on it. We're going to keep these parts together. Any cables? No cables. Okay. Here's the bottom. We'll look at that in a moment. Okay, CMOS battery held in with tape. That seems odd, but there's a CMOS battery. Are we just covering it? Okay, we're just covering it. So they're covering it so there's not a direct short by accident. That is why that's there, because they have a metal plate on the other side of it. So that's covered for shorts. And then bracket for the retention for the cooler. RAM, there's your upgradable RAM. If you are going to upgrade the memory on this for some reason, then this would be how you would access it, all the steps before this. And this is just standard SODIMMs for laptops. And it is, so what they've included in ours, and this probably will vary based on their suppliers, but it's a 1.2 volt Kingston stick. So CPMM04C1903 or CBD26D4S9S1ME-4. And we're going to look up the capacity here. So the memory is 4 gigabyte sticks each, and they're 2666 megahertz. The PCB is just looking at that, and notice this small Easter egg. This is actually kind of cool. I like that small touch. Reminds me of the Master Chief on whatever Xbox that was that we opened, but just asteroids printed on the PCB surface. So PCB, they do actually have the PCB supplier on here, which is abnormal to have printed on the board. Normally they strip all that labeling, so maybe the quantity was probably not high enough to get that service. But this is Aoshikong PCB, which is actually one of the more common PCB companies. And for the rest, let's get the heatsink off. It's going to be Phillips 2 screws. Okay, so we've got 4 spring tension screws, 2 not spring tension screws on the side holding the fan down. These were just tightened until the spring was fully compressed, so easy enough to put them back exactly the same way. There's some Loctite on them. Let's get that fan cable out now that it's fully accessible. Okay, I felt thermal paste for sure. That's funny. Okay, so let's start with the fact, wow, this is so light. This is not a thick PCB. We've played Atari today. Is that like a reference to something? It's interesting how they put that under a giant thing that they know. It's just like there's no components there. A bunch of traces, I guess. Oh, a lot of probe points. There's a ton of probe points if for some reason you had to bring a multimeter to your VCS. Let's move on now. Okay, so it's a thermal pad solution. This is actually similar. We have some replacements of these, by the way, so I can get that situated, replaced once we're done with it. But this is a thermal pad. It's not a graphite one. It's a standard thermal pad. Kind of commonly used on older components especially, and very thin. It's maybe 0.2 millimeters or so, which is ideal. You want as small of an interface as possible to conduct. I think that's probably aluminum. Yeah. So that's aluminum. Aluminum plate, 2.95, so it's 3 millimeter thick aluminum plate. That's it, huh? That's the whole thing. I'm going to take this apart a little further and see if there's a fin stack in there. It's a Phillips 1. So these are plastic screws because they're going into the black plastic funnel thing. Okay, all right, well, that's something for sure. Very similar to a laptop cooler. So small aluminum fin stack there, covered with the shroud. And I guess I could put this face up. This is just an empty chamber. I can see all the way through it. It's just a plastic shell to guide the airflow out of the, or into the box, out of the box, I think in this case. Oh, I didn't notice their heavy plate Atari Today thing has this. Honestly, I was looking at this and I was like, okay, it's like trademarks and company names, but it's not. I'm assuming initials of people who worked on the product, so that's kind of neat. You see AMD right there. So AMD, let's see, I don't know if the rest of these are people. I mean, I see like FCC, for example. Seems kind of odd to me to include the FCC in your credits box. I guess that's possible, but it's maybe more realistically a person's name. All right, so for the SOC, it is labeled AMD Ryzen. We're gonna get a shot of that. So copyright 2016 on here, AMD Ryzen part, which is public at this point anyway. So that's gonna be it for this part. Simple enough, really. And then the bottom of it's just got a heat shield of sorts. Let's go ahead and it's definitely not really conducting it. Maybe EMI, I don't know. It's not like it's not a conductor though. I mean, technically it's a conductor, but it's not attached to anything. Let's take apart the controller. Maybe. There's a reset button, pin on the bottom. This might be harder to non-destructively take apart. Okay. Controller's got a battery in it. Definitely want to disconnect that before doing anything else. so that there's no residual, well, not even residual, just there's no charge. And a white PCB is a really interesting choice. Maybe it's changed in recent years. I haven't really looked into it lately, but a couple years ago, doing a white PCB did add a little bit to cost. And for an unseen part, that's just sort of interesting. Got probe points up there. Piece of hard plastic for some reason right there. Not really sure why. I guess support maybe, rigidity. Oh, this is for the button. Okay. So there's a switch, standard switch, hooked up to just a sprain tension button right there. You can see the two sprains, one on either side. And it's just got a plus sign that hits the switch. So that's a reset button, I think, right there. Up here, that switch. It's actually labeled X11. There's clips here in the middle that are holding the PCB in. And there's some rubber coming through it, these things here. And I do see a little bit of glue around one of them. That's probably going to be holding, because of where they're positioned, it's helping retain this joystick. Okay, all right, let's disconnect. This might actually, it looks like I can take it apart safely. Let's disconnect that ribbon cable. There's your wobble. That's what's causing that. So, okay, all right. So there's gonna be 4 switches under this thing. So there's the rumble. This is their advanced modern rumble feature they're talking about. It's not quite as advanced as the PlayStation 5's controller, but it does have a spinning weight. Pretty standard way to do things. Except not contained anywhere, that's weird. So these are just carbon contact pads, and they get pressed by the joystick, and that's all there is to that. So that's the Atari VCS Tear-Down. Definitely more PCB in there than I thought. The cooler is not impressive, but it probably doesn't need a lot of cooling. We haven't tested it. That's something we might do. I don't know how much people care about thermals for the VCS. Let us know if you care enough for me to spend days on it instead of doing something else. The controller, I'll say, does not feel great compared to even the old one. But there's more in the box than we thought, and at this point we just need to do the actual testing. Pretty easy to disassemble. There is glue involved. You will have to break glue, and I'm probably gonna have to re-glue some of these things when I put it back together, unfortunately, because the feet on the controller. But on the console, so not the controller, the thing that people might actually take apart to put different RAM in there, that there was no glue involved in the process for removing it. So if you pull at the feet that hide the screws and they're stuck to it, then stop. You need to pull at the other side of it, and that'll expose the screw, and then it's pretty simple from there. So that's it for this one. I guess we'll be back shortly with the actual testing of this. It may be like a week out from when this video goes up, but we're gonna work on some game testing and see what we think of it, if it's worth it at this point. And thanks for watching. You can subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to help us out directly, or patreon.com/gamersnexus. We'll see you all next time.